Holy Jesus. What is that? What the f*** is that?
Right, so it's that time again. Let's review another issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. So this is Legacy issue 925 and issue 31 of the Zeb Wells run. This is the massive bumper issue, so there's like 91 pages or something in this issue, and it's basically a compilation of different stories written by different people, artists by different people, but mainly the story follows the wedding of Janice Lincoln and Randy Robertson, and they're getting married, and that's what this whole story focuses around. And essentially this issue is touted to basically set up the next part of Zeb Wells' run, and apparently this issue is going to be really influential down the line. But I just read it, and sorry to disappoint you, or meet your expectations, I guess, but this issue is more of the same really bad stuff that we have seen before, and you have probably seen why.
What the fuck?
If you've been on Twitter, or if you've just been on Reddit, or anywhere where people discuss the Spider-Man comics, you'll know exactly what I'm about to talk about. So let's just get straight into it. So yes, they have a wedding. And you know what? Some of this stuff is written pretty well. Like, Tombstone is pretty cool. Some of the one-liners are pretty funny. And the dialogue is overall fine. It's just villains just being villains. And obviously Tombstone is trying to prepare for this wedding. Obviously, I think it brings out a really nice side of Tombstone that we don't really get to see that often, because obviously it's his daughter's wedding, so he wants everything to be perfect. He's basically saying, no hassle at this wedding, let's all be civil and make sure everything is good. He doesn't even want any of the other villains to come to the wedding, but Hammerhead kind of says, yeah, we'll be good, just please let us come, essentially. So basically, yeah, they all come to the wedding. We also get to catch up with a bunch of the other villains as well, but they're on like a hen do or something, and Felicia Hardy shows up. Like, here's the thing with Felicia, right? I get that she's like an anti-hero, or she's somewhere in between, but she needs to pick a side, man. She's literally dating Spider-Man. I cannot fathom how it would be a good idea to go on a night out with other supervillains. That just doesn't make any sense. What would Peter do if he found out? But anyway, we'll get to that later, because that's a whole different issue. But either way, the whole point of this section of the story is for these villains to convince Felicia Hardy that she shouldn't be dating Spider-Man. And essentially, Janice Lincoln says, yeah, I guess, you know, Randy always tells me to stop being a supervillain. That's how I know he's a good guy. And then Felicia's like, oh my god, Peter's never told me to stop stealing, even though they have had many disputes about Black Cat's antics in the past, but apparently now it's only an issue because Peter hasn't brought it up. And I guess she has a point, like, yeah, if you're dating Spider-Man, you probably shouldn't be stealing. But at the end of the day, Black Cat has shown that no matter what you say to her, or no matter what happens with her, she's always going to be a cat burglar. That is just who she is. But anyway, this convinces Black Cat, hey, I shouldn't be dating Peter Parker. And you know what? Whatever, right? I really liked Peter and Felicia. You guys would know that one of the things that I've been praising about these comic books, if you've been watching my videos, is that I love Peter and Felicia in these comics. Yes, I know the comics aren't great. The Norman Osborn stuff is really bad. The how they handle MJ and Paul, really bad. The Rabin stuff was really bad. And a bunch of other things have been really bad. But one thing that I really like about these comics is Peter Parker and Felicia Hardy's relationship. It is like a breath of fresh air. Their chemistry together and how Zeb Wells writes them is actually pretty good. But no, they've broken up, and even Peter can't be bothered. You literally see in this scene where they break up, Peter's like, "Yep, bet, okay, cool, let's move on now." You know, none of him even cared. And you know what? Maybe in the long run, this was for the best. Maybe it is for the best that they're not together, because maybe the next writer comes along and doesn't see any potential in their growth as a relationship. The main thing that really bothers me is the fact that the way that they handled this breakup for their relationship really overall does summarize and kind of represent the quality of this run as a whole. Because the way that Zeb Wells handled this breakup made it seem like it was not significant at all. And this is what I was worried they were going to do a few issues ago. So if you guys remember me talking about how eventually Felicia and Peter are going to break up at some point, this is exactly how I was worried about how they would handle it. Because, you know, if they broke up a few years down the line and the story really fed into their relationship and why they broke up in the first place, like, obviously Peter and Felicia aren't ever going to last long term, but I feel like that's a story component that you can work with. Why can Peter and Felicia never work together? Why are they two different people to the point where they will never work in a relationship? These aspects of this story and those ideas were never explored before this breakup, which is why this breakup kind of just seems out of nowhere. And that's what I was mainly worried about. I was worried about the fact that they would get them together and then a few issues down the line they would just break them up because, you know, Peter can't handle anything stable in his life ever because he's Peter Parker and they want to keep him at the lowest low that they possibly can. And it's so frustrating because the breakup of Peter and Felicia could have been a really good story if they really explored why they don't work together. But we haven't seen them together in issues. We haven't seen them do anything together to suggest otherwise. We just know that they're a couple. We don't even know what they're like together. They literally have been together maybe 3 or 4 times. I could probably count on one hand how many times I've seen them in an issue together. It's so frustrating, and I can't believe they broke them up again. It's just... And like I said before as well, literally, the reflection of this can be seen through the breakup too. Peter's like, yeah, sure. He even says, ditto cat. Like, yeah, bet. I knew this was going to happen. Like, sure, whatever. It's like the comic knows that it's bad. It's like the comic knows that it's writing this really poorly. There's no care whatsoever has been put into any of the relationships or any of the storytelling here, and it really, really annoys me. So the wedding comes along, and yeah, obviously something goes wrong. I mean, who would have seen that coming? You know, I don't really need to explain this. You know, it's a wedding. You know, there's Tombstone there, Hammerhead there, Peter's there, Aunt May's there. You know, of course something was going to go wrong, right? That's just typical Spider-Man fashion. Tombstone then dies, but then comes back to life, because, you know, Tombstone. And then zip zap zop, Spider-Man saves the day. The guy who attacked the wedding escapes because, you know, that always happens. And yeah, that is it for the main story of this issue. But obviously we do have some sub-stories as well, catching up with a bunch of other Spider-Man characters and catching up with a bunch of other characters in the Marvel Universe in relation to where they're at with Spider-Man and his story. And one of them that I wanted to talk about, and this is the one that you've probably clicked on the video for, but Miss Marvel. So yes, Miss Marvel died in a Spider-Man comic a few issues ago, and the fans uproared at this death. Not only because it was in Spider-Man's comic book, which is the most hella disrespectful thing you can do to a character like Miss Marvel who has her own comic book series. Not only that, they confirmed that Miss Marvel would have her own comic book series run later on this year. So we already knew that she had to come back to fulfill that comic run, which meant that she was going to come back alive anyway, which meant her death meant absolutely nothing for the story. And they've been trying to play this off in the Amazing Spider-Man comics like Kamala's death was a massive event for all of the characters. It really wasn't, because she's alive again. No one cares. But yeah, Kamala is alive now, and she's a part of the X-Men. Oh, brand synergy. I can't. It's so obvious that they're aligning this with what they're doing in the MCU, and it's kind of frustrating because they have this massive speech bubble where they put the X-Men logo when Kamala says the X-Men, and they do it more than once. Like, yeah, we get it. We get it. You're a part of the X-Men now. You're gonna be a mutant in the MCU. We get it. Not only that, Zeb Wells here writes Peter so out of character. Number one, Peter would never reveal his identity to Miss Marvel here. Literally, Peter's secret identity is a massive part of who his character is. And yes, he would reveal his identity to the people that need it, but he doesn't just go out on a limb and just, you know, reveal his identity like this. That's not who Peter Parker is. He would never just do that. We've seen time and time again that Peter would keep his identity secret from his closest friends and his closest allies. So the fact that Miss Marvel just appears out of nowhere, is alive again, and then Peter's like, hey, you know what, I'll just show you who I am, is just completely wrong and out of character. It makes no sense whatsoever. And not only that, Peter says the most outrageous thing ever. Literally, read this. So, this is the interaction between Miss Marvel and Spider-Man. Peter goes, can't believe I'm doing this. Miss Marvel says, what are you doing? Why are you acting so weird? And then Peter, before lifting his mask up, says, I usually save this for kids with incurable diseases. Oh my god! I cannot believe that came out of Peter Parker's mouth. That is the most un-Peter Parker thing ever. And I'm laughing about it because obviously it's a horrible thing to say, but Jesus Christ, that's really bad. Peter Parker would never say this. That's not... I don't even think... Wow. Oh my god. Yeah, I get Spider-Man's a jokester, right? And he quips, but That's just horrible. That's a horrible thing to say. Oh my god. So yeah, Miss Marvel's like, Peter Parker, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you get it. You get the interaction, right? But yeah, Kamala's alive again, so that completely undoes and completely unjustifies the last, I don't know, 10 issues of The Amazing Spider-Man. Like, whatever they were building up with Kamala's death is just completely gone. Even the previous issue where Norman and Peter were kind of resonating over Kamala, and you know what, it was quite a nice scene, you know. Norman was feeling regretful, and it was kind of tying into his character and him being ungoblinified, and Peter was kind of resonating with Norman's regret as well. Yeah, that's all gone now, so yeah, thanks Marvel, thank you. And then we also catch up with Doc Ock. Yeah, he's the Superior Spider-Man again, so you know, I'm actually kind of happy with that, you know. Then we also catch up with MJ and Paul. So they're going through a rough patch. And to be honest with you, I actually really like this. So obviously we know that the kids disappeared, and that was really good for the story. I mean, don't get me wrong. But I actually like the effect that the kids' deaths or disappearance, I don't know, has on MJ and Paul here. It actually adds some substance to their characters in this run, and I really do like it. Especially MJ. Paul is kind of shoved to the sidelines here. He's kind of just in the background. He doesn't really do much, but this is more about MJ and her really having to deal with the fact that she was close with these kids, and I know that they're telling us rather than showing us, and that is an issue. And you guys know that these comics as of recently have broken the show don't tell rule on countless occasions, but at least they're going over it, and at least they're not basically just ignoring it like it never happened. At least they're admitting that it affects MJ's character, which I do like. But one thing I thought was really funny was this panel here when MJ is recalling the kids and their names. She says, "I may never understand a world without Owen and Romy." Then she says Stephanie. And then she says she never did figure out which name she liked the best. And this is incredibly ironic because if you guys remember, we called out, us fans, we called out the fact that Zeb Wells changed the girl's name halfway through the run, and I feel like this is a cover-up because nowhere was it ever said that she didn't know which name to go with. They just completely changed her name and forgot what her name was, and this is 100% the cover-up. But either way, I thought that was really funny. But yeah, so then we have this interaction with MJ and Felicia, and essentially Felicia brings MJ her own superhero costume because, you know, she's jackpot now and she has those superpowers. If you guys have seen my videos in the past, you'll know that I am really against MJ having powers. And it's not that, obviously, MJ, you know, shouldn't have powers. It's just that MJ's character works so much better without them, because I feel like it takes away what makes MJ so special, because MJ's a character that doesn't need superpowers for her character to be really good. And yeah, adding superpowers could add an extra depth or an extra layer to MJ going forward, and maybe there'll be great stories, who knows. But personally, MJ is one of the strongest female characters in comic book history, and I think her character doesn't need superpowers to be great. And I'm really just, I don't know, I'm disappointed that they gave her superpowers, because it's almost like they had nothing left in the tank. They couldn't figure out where her character should go. Oh, just throw superpowers at it. There you go. I doubt that she'll have superpowers forever. I do reckon that once the Spider-Man comics do get reset eventually by a different writer or a different editor or whatever, you know, whenever Marvel Comics decides to go back to square one again, then I'm assuming that MJ won't have superpowers. But either way, that is pretty much it. There are a few other stories sprinkled in there, but I don't think they're really worth my time to go through them on here. The main stories that we've been following are in the ones that we've discussed. So yeah, that is pretty much it for issue 31 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Is it good? No. It's getting worse. They pretty much took everything I love about the comic away. They broke Peter and Felicia up and didn't really do anything with those characters. They gave MJ powers and a superhero costume. I just don't know what to say anymore. And they also brought Kamala back, which we knew they were going to do that anyway, but, you know, I'd hope that maybe they were going to, I don't know, I need to stop reading these goddamn things. Oh. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care, and peace.